Welcome back to the final presentation of the afternoon. I am very excited to introduce our next speaker. With me is Julie Hiromoto. She's a partner and director of integration at HKS, and she is going to be discussing land use and the built environment. I have the pleasure of serving with Julie on the city's Environmental Commission, where she brings a wealth of knowledge, and she is here to share that with y'all this afternoon. Julie, take it away.
Catherine and David, thank you so much for inviting me here today to participate in this amazing event. And thanks to all of you for sticking around till the end of the day. It has been a really rich conversation, and I have the privilege of being your last speaker and being able to synthesize, to integrate, to connect dots across all the experts that you've already heard. None of this was planned, so I love how those synergies just kind of happen. If we can go to the other view on this screen, please. We are nature. I want to start with a provocation that you probably have memories of nature when you were a child. You go there to celebrate special events with your friends. It's a place where you find peace. Maybe nature sparks your creativity. We eat nature. Therefore, we are nature. We rely on it for our businesses, to support our communities, and to make us wonder and feel awe. We could talk about our bodies as the human ecosystem. We are nature. Each of us carries the construct or the infrastructure for trillions of microorganisms, life, within and on our human bodies. We are codependent with these other living beings for our health, whether it's to regulate immunity, aid in our digestion, affect our moods, or sometimes they make us sick if things are not all well in that ecosystem. Our body is occupied by other life that influences our metabolic balance. So I'm going to talk about cities and buildings too. If we're nature and we make cities and buildings, then does that make them nature too? We talk about it as being man-made and thus not nature, but what if we could be more like nature? Here we are. We are in the Anthropocene, the epoch that has been defined as man-made or man-influenced. Our Earth is 4.5 billion years old. That's that line on the bottom there. About 500 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion kick-started life, the complexity and the diversity that we see on this planet now. And those 5 X's there are the mass extinctions that this planet has already experienced, starting about 250 million years ago. That skinny little line, I don't even know if you can see it, but I had to make it really long so you could see it. That tiny sliver represents when humans started migrating across the Earth 35,000 years ago. In the 1800s, we started congregating in cities. And now this digital connectivity has rapidly accelerated our pace of life, the scale of change, and we've already talked about how disorienting and uncomfortable change is today. Is this what we want to be remembered for? This landscape? When we translated from living off the land with communities rooted in place across generations, and at a time when we survived by making things with our own hands and living life at the pace of the sun and the seasons, we embraced a world of modern convenience, of speed, freedom, and independence, with all the unintended consequences of forever chemicals, a disposable economy that generates too much waste, urban blight when industrial systems collapse, and increasing economic polarization. So I like to think of cities as both stressors and solutions to these challenges. Here are 2 very different views and experiences that I've lived in New York City. We can't let convenience, the speed, and the car win, or we can prioritize the human experience. Opportunities that build community. A different way to re-envision and imagine our streets and our public infrastructure. What if everything that you needed was within a 15-minute walk? C40 and many others advocate for this hyperlocal approach to advance economic health, community health, personal health, and environmental health. When we're walking, we are in the community. We are exercising. We are meeting our neighbors. We are putting eyes on the street. All of those benefits, in addition to not having the cars and the traffic safety and the carbon that's in the air and the air quality, are good for us. Here are two pictures of Hong Kong and Singapore. I told you there were some repetitions, not planned. Where would you rather live? The city-state of Singapore, on the right, is one of the most densely populated areas. 6 million people live there in 284 square miles. Dallas is just Dallas, not the whole DFW Metroplex, just Dallas is about 386 square miles. And Singapore has a gross domestic product of 550 billion US dollars. But because this is an island nation, they have to be super intentional about resource management, community assets, and urban policy. In some senses, Texas is an island too, right? We've islanded our grid and our electrical infrastructure. The Sustainable Development Plan in Singapore includes housing, natural resources, open space, tree planting, waste production, transportation, cultural legacy, and efficiency and emissions. And this is a collaborative sponsored program by the Ministries of National Development, Education, Environment, Transportation, Trade, and Industry. It takes all of us to come up with a comprehensive, holistic solution. Here are some spaces in Dallas that we can be really proud of. And there are also some spaces where I would prefer not to spend my time. What differences do you see in these photographs? Anybody? That's not a rhetorical question. Trees. Walkability, security, lots of concrete. How about no people? The image in the bottom left is kind of wild, but I would prefer rewilding with wildflowers as opposed to decaying concrete, and sidewalks, right? Eroding sidewalks. So Texas and Dallas are business-friendly economies. So let's frame all of this in terms of dollars and cents. This information is a little dated. In 2018, the Communities Foundation of Texas cited geographic segregation as a primary barrier to upward mobility and accessible opportunity. Our household income is on the decline. College graduation rates are low. If we can remove some of these persistent barriers through policy, as well as philanthropic and private sector investments, we will bolster our region's economic security for the future. Beyond Dallas, the Aspen Institute's Economic Opportunities Program cites education, workforce training, mobility, access to capital, safety and security as pathways to prosperity. The built environment and our physical infrastructure has a huge role to play in longevity, human rights, neuroaesthetics, family care, job quality, all recognized by the Aspen Institute as necessary components of economic mobility. However, unlike most of these programs, the physical infrastructure investment, if done intentionally and strategically, can function nominally as a kind of set it and forget it investment strategy while it continues to pay dividends. So instead of paying the yoga teacher to come and deliver a session for your workforce once a week, you have a healthier building. I was so excited to see that we were going to be in this room, and then I got here and I noticed that all the windows are covered up with very heavy drapes. We've got a lot of electric lighting for the cameras instead of the daylight. I have no idea what time it is in here. What if we could be working with nature instead of against nature? Our comprehensive environmental climate action plan in Dallas focuses our work on 8 integrated goals that are vital to our future here and our continued vitality that is bolstered by many of the other supporting programs of the city. Did you know that the built environment is responsible for over 40% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. 15% of this is embodied carbon in the energy and of the building and the infrastructure, materials and construction. Almost 30% of that is in building operations. This big challenge can be flipped into a major opportunity to drive resilience, business continuity, and drive down operational costs. There are so many levers to pull, and the integrated solutions that we've been talking about today can offer many co-benefits. If I'm designing for climate action, I can also be synergistically solving for other sustainable development goals, like health and well-being, for example. So let's talk about design's impact when it comes to climate and health. In this last section, I'm going to briefly address some opportunities for intervention and positive change at a variety of nested scales, whether that's at the level of human experience, at a building opportunity level, at the level of a city, a campus, or a region, or thinking about integrated systems. If you think about our bodies and how we grow, how we build, if you want to build muscle, you have to push to the limit, and then you rest and restore, and then you push again. It's not a constant strain. If you don't have that recovery and respite period, you don't have that growth. And thinking about our physical infrastructure and design, can we be integrating passive design strategies? Can we be thinking about working with nature instead of against nature? Can we think about structured variability instead of chaos all the time and unpredictability? Can we think about opportunities for respite and recovery? There are several comprehensive third-party building certifications that can help you make decisions about how to design your building that can enforce and enhance physical and mental health while you get credit for your efforts. Or you could pick just one thing to focus on that demonstrates leadership in an area that is important to your organization, your business, your community. Like, let's take, for example, air quality, which we struggle with here in Dallas. Dr. Joseph Allen's work at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health reminds us to spend the money where it matters. We spend 90% of our time indoors. 90% of the cost of running a business is the people cost. Don't you want to up your people performance? He's demonstrated with studies of replicated in a lab, a sim lab, and then also looking at actual performance in high performance certified buildings that there's a consistent benefit in higher cognitive functioning scores, with the added benefit of higher sleep quality and a higher environmental perception rate. This is no joke, this is real money. At a city policy level, one decision and the many, many years it took to achieve can have so many benefits, like the parking reform that was passed recently. By simplifying the overly prescriptive minimum parking requirements, by my account, we've reaped at least 10 One Health benefits, while also reducing development costs and enhancing the quality of life. We can think about ways to overlap and integrate systems. I mentioned already our Dallas CCAP. We found a way to tie the climate performance criteria to the bond funding, so that each one of these capital infrastructure projects, $1.25 billion worth of investment, will help demonstrate what is possible and to lead by example through simple and easy to understand, achievable, and aspirational targets. So I'll close today with a recap of an event we hosted in Houston a few months ago that charted a path towards identifying the vital signs of a city. And it's a lot of what we've already discussed in this room. We need focus and alignment with cross-sector investment and really prioritization. The built environment is an under-leveraged solution. We're spending all of our time in something that was designed by someone, maybe not as strategically and intentionally as it could have been, but we're not going to stop building, we're not going to stop renovating. So can we do it better? the solutions that we're developing now, they have to work for all of us, and they have to build community rather than reinforce division. And we need to be able to measure our progress and normalize the everyday actions and commitment that's required. So, speaking of action, I'll leave you with 2 questions to ponder. What is the opportunity that's within your locus of control that you can do something about right now? And what are the systemic barriers that you need help moving out of the way? Maybe somebody here in this room can help you address some of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. All right, we're going to open it up to a few questions. If you'll raise your hand, David will come around with the microphone. So what questions do we have for Julie? All right. I think we have one.
So something I think about a lot is that in many ways we still design and build houses and commercial buildings the same way we built them 100, 200 years ago. And is there any concerted movement within the design and architecture community to think about how people live today and how they will live in the future, and thinking more modularly about our building structures and things that can be more easily changed and adapted as new ways of living and new technologies come online?
So many great thoughts in that question. Thank you for that. I think we need to look even further back than the Industrial Revolution. Air conditioning and elevators changed everything, right? So we went from a indigenous kind of passive design solution on how to live comfortably and protected from the elements to a hyper-controlled, completely uniform and rigid built environment, right? That's 68 degrees all the time, and the light level is always the same. For humans, that's not good for our physiology, for our physical bodies, nor our brains. And so that modularity and change is important. It helps our sleep. It helps us build our kind of perceptive ability to react and respond to things. I mean, that's part of the underlying work about the air quality from Dr. Joe Allen's work. And then I think looking to the future, so learning from the past, but looking to the future, all of the opportunities that we have with digital technology and information, we don't have to guess anymore. We can use the data to predict the risks, as we were talking about earlier today, of when we might need to reinforce our infrastructure, whether that's power or water or other things. We can look at live air quality monitoring in the space and outside to help us decide whether or not we should open the windows. We can use technology and artificial intelligence to help us scenario plan and think about options and explore run analysis. But what we don't want to do is fall into this trap of technology substitutionalist logic, that instead of our really amazing, powerful human brains, we're just going to let technology solve everything for us, because then we get lazy or complacent and we think that we can just all go away to Mars and forget this planet, instead of working on the challenges of, restoring and maintaining this beautiful place that we have evolved in.
All right, we'll go to Ian and then Dr. Bocalandro.
So as you mentioned in the presentation, the city of Dallas has made some great progress towards being a more sustainable city in the last decade. Many of the parks that you kind of featured, those green spaces that you want to be in, are relatively new to the city. Additionally, we've passed things like parking reform, also the Forward Dallas plan. Whenever it comes to the city of Dallas in particular, or perhaps other cities in North Texas, What do you see as being one or two of the next big policy decisions that, big changes that need to be made at the policy level for municipalities to move towards more sustainable cities, more sustainable land use in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We have been spending a lot of time exploring and investing in brain health and the brain economy. So thinking about cognitive potential. We already know that our built environments are a huge preventative health driver for physical health and mental health. If you take the stairs instead of the elevator, you're building your cardiovascular endurance. And you're seeing people in the stair and you're talking to them. Instead of, getting in our car and going from point A to point B, and we're encapsulated in a bubble and we don't talk to anybody else, right? Cognitive potential, I think, is the next frontier. So if you as a business, or you as a teacher, or you as a parent can increase your creativity by 3%, you can become more collaborative, just a little bit. If you can have better executive decision-making skills and crisis response reactions, think about how much more powerful, more productive, and more beneficial that will be to our larger society to solve some of the biggest challenges that we all collectively face right now. The state of Texas last year made a huge investment in dementia prevention. The DPRIT bill is billions of dollars to be spent here in Texas, and Texas is poised to be a brain economy leader in the future. This is a topic that the World Economic Forum has talked about for the last 2 years at Davos. And in this third year, we'll take action on brain healthy priorities. So I think that there's really an opportunity here for Texas to lead by example as well. And what we already know about our built environment and the things that are good for our physical health and our mental health, they're also good for our cognitive health. The American Heart Association says what's good for your heart is good for your brain. It's all physical activity, it's that natural stimuli, it's the variation and controlled change, predictable change. All of those things are good for the environment too. So when we do this in a comprehensive and aligned way, we're solving for multiple issues at once. And maybe the person, the decision maker who doesn't want to hear about the water and the energy efficiencies, maybe they care about their brain and how smart they can make their people and the better decisions that we can collectively make.
Definitely getting your steps today. Thank you so much, Julie.
You're on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julie. For me, it's an honor to see fellow commissioners do such brilliant presentations. I just wanted to let you know that I realized why I didn't get along with my father when I was studying at the university as an urban planner in Caracas, Venezuela, where everything had to be developed. And now I come from the future. We no longer have a country, and whoever wants to have drinks on that, we can do that. But I'm not going to talk about that. He was an MIT bachelor in civil engineer, graduated with honors. And when you showed those pictures, the one in the middle, which is where downtown is, where there's no one, I would have said, Tony would have loved that picture. Because he only thought about cars. And when I was studying urban planning, I said, I prefer to walk. And he said, honey, just like this, en español, por supuesto. But he said, honey, we have to develop as a nation first, and then we will deal with the environmental problems and passives. And that way of development has got us here. So I really like the graph that you put up with the parking, because mobility is my thing. And so the minute, I know people are gonna get pissed off, but the minute you put up the parking rates and the minute you do this and that, people will start thinking, oh, maybe there's another way to get to downtown. And something I saw a long time ago, 40 years ago, I don't know, I'm dating myself. I went to Curitiba and I met Jaime Lerner, who has a little video against Arlo, who's the car. Curitiba, 30 years ago, was leading in sustainable practices. They were moving people at the same rate as a metro system that's underground with buses and with incredible platforms to get people in and out. But it was a huge effort where the whole community participated. So I think we can pick from countries that have less money to work smarter with the people, asking the people how they can collaborate. And so something he did is he had in the slums, which were up mountains, he couldn't get the people from garbage collection there. So he would give the bags to the students, and any student who brought a bag with waste, they would give them a token for the public transportation. So it's creativity. And then the other example I wanted to talk about, I also saw 40 years ago when I was a civil servant in Venezuela. It's the versement de transport in France. And I know a lot of you might know about this. But having good mobility solutions in a city not only benefits the person that needs the transportation, but all of society, because less air pollution increases, better retention rates and completion in the students, etc. So what they did is each city did their own taxes, and with the taxes that they charged the employers that had more than X number of employees, that the productivity would get better if they had a good transportation system and they were just reading instead of trying to park their car in a traffic jam or in a crash. They would all contribute with a tax that was the versement de transport. And I got to see 3 cities, Laon, Nancy, and Grenoble. And each mayor developed their own type of mass transport for what they needed with that tax. With their citizens, they said, what is the best transport? And so in Grenoble, there was a lot of people that were injured, and it was a hospital kind of place. So they had to lower the technology from being underneath the trains to putting up so that people could get off on the train on a normal sidewalk with a wheelchair. In Laon, which was a big, all the people were up here because they used to be attacked when in the back in the days. They needed a system that was like a gondola on the road, on the land, that would take people up in this little box, and it was totally automatic. This was 40 years ago, you guys. Come on. We have to be creative. We have to stop looking at our belly button here in US and trying to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of countries and cities. As you said, I mean, how many countries of Europe fit in Texas? Or the East Coast, how many states? So let's wake up. Let's do this network. We can do this. There's enough talent, enough expertise, and enough networking and political and the networks we've been creating for years to do this. But we got to start with very small examples like that. Who would have known that by a parking plan, we could get all these benefits? So congratulations, Julie. I love what you do, and thank you for giving me the mic. And my name is Boca Grande in the bus, so you have to go like this. So you go like this, David, when I go too long.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you.
Gracias, Dr. Boca Grande.
Thank you.
You mentioned so many great points. Let me just touch on some of those to pull those out for everybody. It was mentioned earlier today that we had the foresight to build bigger, better, faster roads so that we could accommodate our growth. My personal opinion, the easier we make single occupant vehicle transit, the more cars there will be on the road. When it gets more expensive to drive and park your car, like in New York City, like if you have to pay for a parking spot for your car, it's like in another apartment. So you don't have a car. It's just like that building that muscle mass, right? There needs to be a little bit of pain and friction to grow, to get to the next level. And so thank you. I think the other point that you made too about the photos of the images, all the ones on the bottom, they didn't have any people in them. They were stark places with no people, and the people are the magic. And the people that you meet on transit are, that's a part of the life of living in a city. And so those mobility questions are tied directly to the density question, right? Because it becomes too expensive, too inefficient, all the excuses when there's not enough density. So everything is kind of interconnected in that way.
Let's take a couple of minutes for, got my mic on? Let's take a couple minutes for table work to respond to Julie's thoughts because they're so brilliant. Let's take a minute to do our table work, then we're going to come back and close. We've got a great close plan, but so take a couple minutes and do your table work, and we'll come back and get those comments and then go on.
So we're going to just,
Slides back that have the two questions that you wanted us to talk about.
the last slide.
I don't have a... Can we
Our
put the
friends in
slides back up, please?
Yeah, our friends in the back of the room are working on that.
Joshua. Yeah.
So just like we've been doing all day long, we're going to share what we gleaned from this presentation. We're going to exchange ideas and talk about solutions, and then we're going to come back to you and ask one person from each of your tables to share that with the group. And then we're going to synthesize some of those ideas and put together some calls to action and talk about how we continue this conversation long after EarthX is over. But please join me in thanking Julie Hiromoto once again for her presentation.